of 4 topics, and the way the format will work is Delisa will share the screen right now so you can see today's agenda. I want to welcome our 2 speakers, Lydia High with Precise Business Management and Leah Crawford with Crawford Management Group. Go ahead, next slide, please. For today's agenda, what we'll be covering is the CARES Act statistics and an overview on where the program is nationally, where it is here in Nevada. And then after that, we'll have a Q&A segment. Essentially, the way things will go is each of our presenters will take about 5 minutes, hit some highlights, some key points within their presentation, and then we'll allow about a 5-minute segment for you to ask questions.
Can you mute it?
We'll move on to the payroll protection overview, and then after that, there'll be a Q&A segment. Then next up, next slide, please. Next, we'll talk about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, some updates on that, and then that'll be followed by a Q&A segment, and then we'll conclude with a discussion about unemployment insurance updates, because we recognize that some of you may be in the category of an independent contractor, or you may be an individual that's in a situation where you've been furloughed or laid off, and you're subject to making an unemployment insurance claim. So we'll cover that, and then there'll be a Q&A segment for that. And then towards the very end, before we wrap up, there'll be about 10 or 15 minutes time if you have some general questions or some follow-up or something that we have not covered at that point. So what I'd like to do now is get started with our first presenter. Next slide, please. And I'd like to introduce Leah Crawford, who's going to give you some information about some of the statistics and then an overview for where things are with the state of Nevada. Leah Crawford.
Thank you, Ken. Can you hear me? I can't see me, so can you hear me? All right, so, so COVID-19. COVID-19, I think we're going into our 7th week, if I'm not mistaken. And because of the economic impact that this is going to have on our economy, as we know, Congress initiated the CARES Act. And with the CARES Act, there were 2 programs for small business owners. What makes this act so unique is there is no set precedent for it to follow. And they wanted to get monies out to our communities, to our small business owners, so that our economies would not shut down because of us having to close for COVID-19. With that, just wanted to give you an update to say the SBA is working, and they're working super hard, as you know. The local banks, now credit unions, and CDFIs will also be able to give these loans. But just to give you some stats on what has happened so far. So with the EIDL program, that's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, as of April 19th, there were 26,919 loans approved. Total dollars were in excess of 5.5 billion. Here in Nevada, we had 545 loans approved with total dollars in excess of 118 million. For the PPP program, as of 4/20, and that's the Payroll Protection Program, the loans approved were 1,661,367. That's a lot of loans, that's a lot of work. Total dollars were in excess of 342 billion, and here in Nevada, we had 8,674 loans approved, and we actually received a little over $2 billion. Why is all this important? Because just when people, and I know people were getting frustrated with going through the process of getting these loans. I want you to know people are getting funded. You have to have your information ready because they're asking for documentation in order to get these loans approved. Next slide. I want to share with you like one of my success stories. So I deal with a number of clients, and two clients. One client, very frustrated because they submitted the application in the first set, found out that the first of the applications went away, so they applied again. Had success because they were able to get their EIDL funded within 3 days after the SBA worked out its process. So I want to let you know people locally are getting funded, and now we have to understand what to do with the money. And I want to give control to Lydia so she can share one of her success stories. Lydia?
Yes, yes. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on today, and I hope everyone is staying safe. Yes, I'm Lydia with Precise Business Management, and I have several clients that have applied for the loan as well. And I've had a client or few clients that's received funding, and I just want people to be aware that they receive funding in the excess of what they applied for. So initially, if you apply for $50,000 and you happen to get $100,000 into your bank account, just be aware that the lenders are processing so many loans that their mistakes may happen. But the accountability is up to you to notify the lender that you may have received more funds than you applied for, because they will do a reversal in your account. So if you are applying for any funds, and when you do your payroll calculation, it'll give you the amount that you are eligible for, and that's the amount you should receive in your account. If you receive more than that, please notify your lender, because you do not want to get overdraft or have any liabilities due to you in your business at this time of restraint for small businesses. So I do have several clients that successfully received their funds. Thank you to small businesses for being patient and being able to receive their funds in the first round. And I do have clients that are waiting for the funds in the second round. So we do have success stories. Out of all the applications that I've applied for my clients, at least 50% of them have received their funds in the first round. So it's helping them to bring back employees and to be able to help their business in paying their rent and paying their utilities and some of their debt. So if there's any questions that anyone has, I think this is the time that we're answering any questions for this portion. And I'll give it back to Ken.
Okay, does anyone have any questions about the process or turning in an application or anything along those lines? And if you do, you can type it in the chat, and we have someone monitoring the chat with your question. The other option is to raise your hand with the raise your hand function. Okay, seeing no questions here, we'll move on into our next, okay, wait a minute. Okay, the question is, what documents do we need to have prepared? And what I'll do is, I'm going to, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna table that question because Brandon, they'll be covering that for the PPP section as well as the EIDL section. So we will come back to that. Good question. Any other questions? Go ahead, Brandon. You raised your hand. Go ahead.
That's a mistake, Ken. I'm cooking at the same time. I'm sorry, brother.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Okay. We'll go ahead and move forward with the next segment, and that's the Payroll Protection Program update. Lydia will cover that. She'll talk both about what you need to do to substantiate it, as well as what you should use the funds for. Lydia, please.
Yes, thank you, Ken. So lenders will forgive the payroll protection loan if you spend 100% of the funds on payroll, mortgage interest, rent, and utilities in the 8 weeks after receiving the loan. You must spend 75% significantly on payroll and the other 25% to be divided between rent, utilities, and mortgage interest if you have mortgage interest. And you can use the loan to cover existing debt obligations such as credit card payments, but you will not receive loan forgiveness for those costs. So if you do use your PPP loan for anything outside of the rent, utilities, mortgage interest, and payroll, it will be transferred into a loan with your lender. The idea is that the loan is to keep workers employed in light of the 2 months after receiving the funds. So if you want the funds to be reduced, you want to be able to utilize the funds for those 3 areas. Using more than 25% of the payroll will be unforgivable, and you would have to be able to pay it back. The loan is equal to 75%, so if you divide it, whatever your amount is, by 0.75, that is the equal amount that you should be spending on payroll costs. So if you have 100% of your loan that you're using for payroll under the coverage period, which ends on June 30th, then you'll be able to have it 100% forgivable. If you laid off employees or reduced wages and you hired them back, then you will be able to have it forgivable. However, if you hired them back for less than the amount that the salary amount that you were paying them prior to the January through March, then your loan will be reduced dollar for dollar for that amount. Now, the SBA hasn't come out with the calculations on how that's going to be calculated for you, but it will be reduced if you've brought back your employees for less than the salary amount that you had them at in January to December of 2019 and January through March 1st of 2020. So if you bring them back at the same salary amount, it's 100% forgiven. If you do not, then it will be an adjustment for dollar to dollar. The documentations that you're going to need for loan expenses is going to be either canceled checks, payment receipts, statement accounts. And what I do suggest, if you have a payroll company or someone that handles your payroll, to please reach out to them so that they can give you the substantiation you need it for payroll. If you do not have someone working with you, this is a great time after you've been funded to reach out to an accounting firm, Leaha or myself, to be able to help you with that substantiation that you may need so that this can be 100% forgivable. So you want to be able to know that you have the paperwork in order. This is the time that if you've been funded to make sure your paperwork is in order prior to you utilizing these funds, because you have to apply for the loan forgiveness. It's not something that's automatic. And the documentations, you want to make sure that you bring the right ones to the table and not assume that you're spending them on debt that is going to be forgivable. So make sure that you have your payroll documentations, your salary, wages for the period used for the loan, your payroll reports from your payroll provider, and any state filing or paperwork that you may have to verify retirement or health insurance contributions. You can show your mortgage interest, and you can show these through canceled checks, payment receipts, and account statements. If you're a sole proprietor or self-employed worker, you can use the proceeds to replace lost income up to $100,000, but you may not have to pay it back if you have substantiation for that as well. So definitely different lenders have different guidelines. So whatever third party or bank that you received your funds from, make sure that you are in contact with them, because there's not a one size fit all when it's set to the guidelines that your bank or your lender may be requiring. So they'll give you up to 60 days once you received your acceptance for the forgiveness loan. Is something you have to request with your lender. So it's not an automatic. So once the 8 weeks is processed, you request this forgiveness from your lender, and they will give you the guidelines for forgiveness for their loan. And I just wanted to kind of give an example for the forgiveness in practice. So if you have up to 20, let's say for example, 20 employees, and you've had them for the whole year of 2019, and then the beginning of January and March of 2020, and then you reduce them, in that time, the substantiation that you provided to them, let's say for example, was $100,000, and then you received that $100,000. If you utilize all of that for payroll, you're eligible for forgiveness. If you bring your employees back as of March 1st and June 30th, and you've reduced their salaries, or you've brought back less employees, instead of your 10 or 20 employees, you brought back 5, again, you'll be required to pay the difference back at 1% to your lender. It will then turn into a loan. So definitely make sure you know the specifics from your lender guidelines with regards to paying back the loan forgiveness. And this is the time that you want to make sure your paperwork is in order, because a lot of small businesses have gotten funded. So we want to make sure that you're doing that. So if you don't have an accountant or you don't have someone doing your books, please reach out to a professional, an accounting firm. Like I said, my company is here for you, and Leah is here for you as well to help you with the substantiation, because we want to make sure that all the loans are forgiven for small businesses. Back to you, Ken.
Okay, thank you very much, Lydia. And at this time, I'm checking to see if we have any questions. And then actually, we'll go back to Brandon. Just want to make sure if you caught that for the PPP program, the documents that you need, or if you had any follow-up questions to what you asked before.
Ken, I wanted to ask about a little bit, can she explain a little bit more for single proprietors? What is it that they're able to recoup?
So yes, absolutely. Sole proprietors and other self-employed workers can use the loan proceeds to replace lost income up to $100,000 annually. So if you do this, please remember that the loan must be used for non-payroll costs in order to be qualified for full forgiveness. So you can use it for any materials or any expenses you may have as a sole proprietor, self-employed. You would have to be able to substantiate that you have a sole proprietorship, either through your business license, or if you have 1099s, or however you file your taxes, and to be able to give bank statements on how you utilize the funds at the time. And again, if you have any questions or concerns and you've received the funding and you want to make sure that you are appropriating them correctly, definitely reach out to an accounting firm or someone that can help you do that prior to spending the money. But again, for sole proprietors and self-employed, you can use the proceeds to replace lost income up to $100,000. That will be shown on a 1099 or any statement that you may have from Square or whatever merchant service that you utilize.
Okay, the next question is, what are the requirements for nonprofits for PPP?
So for nonprofits, it's the same requirements, because it's payroll with regards to the employees you may have in your nonprofit agency. So if you have employees that are through a payroll provider, or if you've done the payroll yourself and you have the required documents, which they ask for 941s, 940s, your payroll information that they utilize to find out if you were eligible and how much you were eligible for. So for nonprofit, it works the same. If you had submitted those documents that was required, that amount that you became eligible for, you will receive that. And again, you have to utilize it the same way. So you would have to utilize it for payroll, 75% of it for payroll, and then the others for rent, utilities, or mortgage interest. And you still have to substantiate it the same way with canceled checks, payment receipts, or account statements you may have, and also the information that you receive from your payroll provider, which is your payroll summary reports, or any of that substantiation from payroll. So it works the same for nonprofits as it does for-profits with regards to the substantiation. And I just want to make sure that I clearly state that you have to reach out to your lender for this forgiveness program. It's not something that is automatic.
Okay, and then we have a question from Dr. Stephanie Ardrey. I think I said that correctly. It says, which lenders in Nevada are processing PPPs? And I can assist with that one if you like.
Sure, there's so many lenders that are processing it right now. I can just name a few and you can name a few. The banks are actually processing now, Wells Fargo, Chase, all the banks are processing them now that I'm seeing. A lot of people are getting the links through their website, but US Bank, Bank of Nevada, Nevada State Bank, Cabbage is processing it. A lot of merchant services are processing it, and as well as credit unions. So again, I believe the SBA has reached out to a lot of financial institutions and merchant services to help with this request. So a lot of services are now coming in as third party and helping support the process.
That is correct. Thanks, Lydia. And then the one thing I wanted to add to it is, if you've been paying attention, part of the frustration with the previous round is that there was a feeling that the money did not go where it needed to go. So what I can tell you is through our Nevada congressional delegation, individuals like Congressman Horsford, Congresswoman Lee, and Congresswoman Titus, what they've done in this round is made sure that small businesses are going to be taken care of. And then in addition to that, there was some advocacy to make sure that minority business enterprises would be taken care of. So to that end, there's a $60 billion carve out, and the way that $60 billion is administered, at least here in the state of Nevada, is that will be done through credit unions, community development financial institutions or CDFIs, and then some community banks. What I can tell you, and hopefully this will be helpful, is there's an entity called Prestamos, and they for sure are doing PPP loans for individuals that may not have made it in to get in the queue before. That's a very good option. And then we're also looking at another CDFI that hopefully we'll be able to do that with as well. But again, to Lydia's point, if you have an existing banking relationship or credit union relationship, that's the best place to start. Any other questions on PPP? Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and move into the economic injury disaster loan update or the EIDL update. And Leah, if you would, please give us an update on that program.
Am I on? Hold up, let me make sure. Good morning, good morning. The economic injury disaster loan update. The economic injury disaster loan was actually the first product that was put out by the SBA. Funding ran out, but more funding is scheduled to come to start. We start today. Today is April 27th. Yes, today, Congress approved last week, and the monies should be available today for banks to start funding loans again. The loans have a $10,000 forgivable advance. You must qualify as a small business owner by the number of your employees. The number of employees was 500 employees or less. The maximum amount of this loan is $2 million, and the loan advance for the SBA should come in days, whether your loan is approved or not. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, well, the next slide just talked about what you can spend the money on. And just to reiterate what Lydia was talking about is you have to spend this money on business expenses. What does that mean? So you pay your rent. If you have a home-based business, you possibly could pay a portion of your bills, whatever you take on your tax return. You have to have the documentation, though, to back up what you are actually doing. Have to have the documentation. If you don't have an accountant, if you're not sure how to prepare it, you can call myself, you can call Lydia's company, and we can help you through this process. The documentation with this is going to be very, very important. If you don't have it, it's okay. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. We're just saying, guys, let's get this one right, because some of these funds can be written off as a grant, and that's huge because you don't have to pay it back. If you do have to pay it back, though, for this loan, the terms are there. It is up to 30 years. It's a 3.75 interest rate. Why is that important? You really can't get a loan. Those of us that know about, if you know about money and borrowing, especially as a small business owner, the lowest rate you'll possibly get is a 6%, and they want that money back in 5 to 10 years. Well, this loan can go out for 30 years. This is a huge opportunity for us. If you're able to apply for the EIDL loan, get those funds, and use those funds for your business while you figure out how you're going to reorganize, plan, and move forward, because we really don't know what the impact of our situation is going to be. Are there any questions?
Yeah, this is Ken here. I'll ask a question. So it sounds
Can
like,
you go to the next slide, please? The next slide didn't come up. Maybe, I think Delisa's got it. Okay. It's how to spend the loan proceeds. Go ahead, your question.
yeah, the question I had is this. So it sounds like you're in a position to borrow more money with the EIDL versus with the PPP program. Is that true?
Yes. So EIDL didn't use the 2.5 times your payroll number. They looked at, when you did your EIDL loan, your application, you wrote out your business expenses. And they basically estimated your loan amount off of your business expenses. So, and it was 6 months. So if your business expenses were $10,000 a month times 6, it's a $60,000 loan. What that means, this loan is deferred for a year. So you have $60,000 in the bank. You have some time to really think about what it is that you need to do and how you need to do it. You can pay your bills, and then part of it also can be forgiven. And that is correct. Somebody just put on SBA site is still not accepting EIDL loan applications. Are there any other options? Right now, from what I understand, they're just going to work on the EIDL fund, the EIDL applications that are in queue. That was my last understanding from the site. The part of the EIDL that they are doing is the advance. They're only doing the advance now because they're still working on the loans that were in queue. So Dr. Audrey, that is correct. Other option is PPP. You can apply, if you do have an EIDL loan that is in queue, you can still apply for PPP. You just can't use the funds for the same thing. So if you use the funds for payroll, under PPP, you can use the EIDL funds if you are in queue for rent, utilities, and other expenses.
And then my question is, how do they do the calculation for the advance? So for example, let's say I have 5 people. Will I get the entire $10,000 advance or less?
No, so they take the number of employees times $1,000. So if you have 5 employees, for EIDL, it's 5 times 1,000. You would get a $5,000 advance and use that for payroll, and the advance is written off. It turns into a grant, not written off. It turns into a grant.
And then follow-up question to that calculation. So let's say that, going back to your example, originally I applied for 6 times $10,000 or 60,000. Would that mean that I would get, and I had 5 employees, so that would mean that I would get an additional $55,000 on top of the original $5,000 advance, correct?
Yeah. Yes, and you can also apply for the PPP program.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, it says, I have 2 1099 employees. Am I eligible for PPP?
The answer is, I've seen people get PPP, but they applied as independent contractors. This program asks for W-2 wages. And that had been a concern, because if you have 1099 contractors, they also, for this purpose, are considered to have their own businesses. So you apply for you, and then they will apply for themselves.
Okay, and then the other question I had along the lines is, had an individual that received a 10K advance 2 weeks ago, should they expect the balance of their idle funds from the first or second batch that's being processed?
The SBA should have reached out. So if they've gotten the advance, the SBA will reach out to you, because now they should be able, with this next set of funding, to fund the balance of the idle funds. You'll find out if they were approved or denied, because whether they are approved or denied, they got the advance. And it's actually a website. They'll send you a link, give you a login. But I would just call the SBA, and I have their 800 number here for their customer service. Let me find it, because I just had it. Give me a second, Ken. I'll find the 800 number for the SBA that you can call. And they are very friendly. They are trying to answer as many questions as possible. Of course, the wait time might be about 10 minutes, but I can tell you that they answered my questions. They helped me through with some clients, and we were actually very successful in getting answers. Just know they are overwhelmed, because this is not just one area, since it is nationwide. As a matter of fact, worldwide, you know, everyone is calling, just trying to get answers. The number I have is, it's a Texas number. It's 817-868-2300, and I'll put this in the queue. And that was a number that I've been calling for my clients, and we are actually having some success.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Leah. Okay, we'll move on to our last segment now, which will be a discussion about unemployment insurance, and that's important, again, to individuals that may be self-employed, independent contractors, as well as, just in case, you'll have this information for your employees. With that, Lydia, please.
Thank you. Again, the unemployment benefit is under the CARES Act. Generally, the federal government has expanded unemployment benefits under the CARES Act, and self-employment, I apologize for that. Self-employment workers are usually ineligible for unemployment benefits, and including independent contractors, sole proprietors, and people that have gigs on the side are now eligible to qualify under the new law, and the extra $600 a week for unemployment compensation. It's been extended for 13 weeks for a maximum of 39 weeks of benefits. And the eligibility guidelines for the state of Nevada is basically that you're unemployed due to COVID-19 and you're unable to work due to COVID-19. Under normal circumstances, the state requires that you seek work each week as you file a claim, but right now you don't. So if you're home because of self-quarantine or being quarantined with regards to government regulations, or caring for someone that's a sick family member, then you qualify. The state of Nevada has set up a toll-free number that you can call. So if you are a sole proprietor or independent contractor, then, or a caregiver, or you want to call the 800 number, which is 1-800-603-9671, 1-800-603-9671. So if you're an independent contractor, you can now apply for unemployment. And with regards to the substantiation for that, you just have to show that you are an independent contractor. Again, that substantiation goes with your 1099s, or how you are being paid, or if you have an S corporation and you treat yourself as an employee, you still qualify under the CARES Act. Each state is different with regards to the requirements for unemployment for self-employed or sole proprietor. In the state of Nevada, you would have to call them and they will tell you what you have to do to apply. Right now, they said it would be open this week for self-employed, and they will have a link on their website as of Friday. I didn't see the link on the website for self-employed, but I did speak to some representative and agents at DETR, and they were able to tell me that this is the number, and they will be able to open and answer those questions for any independent contractors as of this week. So I definitely suggest that you call this number. This is a different number than the claims, the UI claims number. So if you are an employee and you're putting in the claim, this is not the number you would call. You would call the general number for the UI claim for unemployment if you are an employee. And again, it should be open this week for self-employed. And the question is, when do you stop unemployment benefits? You stop unemployment benefits when you regain income. Even though the maximum is 39 weeks of benefits, if you regain income, you want to contact the unemployment agency to let them know that you are receiving income and that you no longer need the benefits, because these benefits will have to be repaid back if you are no longer eligible for them, if you are now working again and you've regained income as a self-employed individual, as a sole proprietor, or as an employee. So if you go back to work and you're rehired, you want to make sure that you are notifying the unemployment insurance office.
Okay, thank you, Lydia. And we've had some questions that came in. One thing I'd like you to do, again, if you could just mention, and I think Lisa may have typed it, if you could mention that special number that'll be for self-employed independent contractors again, please.
So if you are a sole proprietor, independent contractor, you want to contact the unemployment agency through 1-800-603-9671. This is the toll-free hotline for independent contractors, 1-800-603-9671.
Okay, and then a clarification question. If you're self-employed, can you use both unemployment benefits and PPP? Or actually, this is confirming that you cannot do that.
So if you have received the payroll protection program and you receive funds through that, my understanding is that you can apply for unemployment. You can apply for unemployment because as a sole proprietor, if you don't, because some depending on where you went to get funding, some lenders are not giving the funding to sole proprietors because the requirements is the 941s and the W-3 and the 940, and sole proprietors tend not to have that. So some financial institutions are not allowing just to have the 1099s. You have to have those other substantiation documents to apply for it. So if you do have a lender that you did receive payroll protection program through a lender and you're an independent contractor and a sole proprietor, you want to make sure that you are letting unemployment know that when you contact them, because different agencies are different and they're just opening up this program. It is not a state program. So the unemployment for sole proprietors and independent contractors is not through the state. Regular unemployment is through the state of Nevada. This is a federal program that is being launched through the unemployment agency, but it's not a state program. So when you do call the 800 number, just make sure that you're clear to let them know you did receive funds through the payroll protection program, and to make sure that you are eligible for the unemployment through this federal program and you will not have to pay it back.
Okay. Do we have any other questions at this time? I think most people have been putting their questions in the chat.
Yeah, I have one quick question. If you are employed where it's that you're receiving on commission and you're also having a second job as a self-employed individual, a gig, are you still able to apply for unemployment?
Yes, you're able to apply for unemployment. So if your income has been affected in any way through COVID-19, such as being quarantined or caring for a sick family member, or the government regulations to be able to stay indoors, and your income has been affected, yes, you do qualify for unemployment.
Thank you.
And then one thing I wanted to do is I want to make sure I mention another resource that's part of this call. Phyllis Johnson with PKJ Consulting is also on, and she's an Urban Chamber member. She's also an accountant as well. What I wanted to ask her to do is if you could type your information into the chat room, that way people have you as yet another resource, because part of the reason why we're doing this is we want people to understand that whether you need assistance substantiating your application or whether you need assistance doing the documentation so that you can make sure that your initial loan is forgivable under the Payroll Protection Program, we do have some professionals if you don't already have someone to assist you. So I just want to make sure you have as many resources as possible. And Phyllis did put her information in there. So thank you, Phyllis, for doing that. So again, are there any other questions? This is the part of our webinar where we're going to open it up if you need to circle back for any of the topics that we covered, or if you have some general questions about anything related to your situation. We definitely have time now for you to ask your questions. And you can raise your hand or you can put it in the chat line. And while you're doing that, I'll just mention the fact that we do have contact information for both Leah Crawford at Crawford Management Group. That slide's up right now. In addition to that, we have information for Lydia High at Precise Business Management. And then again, Phyllis just added her information in the chat room. I want to go back to a question that Antoine asked earlier about getting a copy of the slides. And I think everyone saw by now, yes, we can provide a copy of the slide deck in PDF format. We can send that out to our entire membership. And then in addition to that, for our webinars like this, once we get it edited and packaged correctly, we can also send that out as well. I also want to point out the fact that if you have not already been there, we do have a COVID-19 updates resource page. If you go to urbanchamber.org and click on the banner at the very top, or even if you're on a mobile phone, you'll still see that red and pink banner. If you click on that, we have a whole page full of resources. We'll add the information that we've covered here today. And then that way you'll be in a position to follow up at your leisure. But again, if you have questions, we do have some individuals that can help. I am getting some additional questions here, so let me ask those. First question was, not sure if this was asked, but will taxes have to be paid on the weekly $600? And that's referring to the additional $600 that's coming from the federal government as a part of the expanded unemployment insurance. So I'll turn that question over to Lydia.
Yes, absolutely. So that everyone knows, the funds that you're receiving from the IRS with regards to your independent release is going to be issued to you as income. The unemployment income that you receive is going to be issued to you as income, and all of this income is taxable income. So again, if you're receiving unemployment, as you speak to the representative, they will ask you if you want this to be taxed or if you do not wish for it to be taxed, and you will be able to select that. I know that at the end of the year, this will be issued as income from the unemployment agency, from the IRS. If you did receive your independent relief, it will be issued as income as well, and you will have to pay taxes on that. Again, loans are not income, so you won't be taxed on any of the loans that you receive. It's not considered income, as well as the forgiveness loan. If you're forgiven for that, it's not considered income. So any of the loans that you receive from your lenders, you will not have to pay taxes on, but you will have to pay taxes on the independent relief, the $1,200 and the additional $500 for independent contractors, as well as your unemployment. you will have to pay taxes on. I just want to just add something really quick to go back a little bit and just state that if you are a business owner or sole proprietor and you have not applied for this loan, even though it's temporarily closed right now, and you may be, I have a few clients that may be purchasing homes or doing other transactions and don't want it to interfere with what they're currently doing, do apply for it when it reopens. Do apply for it. And if you haven't had an opportunity to apply for it because it's closed, you want to, again, apply for it when it reopens. Sometimes on the site, you can go on and it may open up on the weekend, on a Saturday, on a Sunday for a short period of time. But if you haven't applied for it, definitely make sure that you apply for it. Thank you, Ken.
All right. Thank you very much, Lydia.
Ken,
Yeah, go ahead, Leah.
I also wanted to add, if you are successful in getting these funds, plan how you're going to use the money. Because what we don't, like Lydia said, it's not automatically forgivable. So you need to have your documentation in order. And if you, I know you had to get it in order. If it's not in order to apply for the loan, once you get the funds, have a plan so that we can get most of these funds forgiven and it can turn into a grant. And communicate with the bank. We need to know, number one, in your promissory note, what's expected, when it's going to start, when are these loans going to have to be repaid? What are their payment amounts? We need to budget. We need to cash flow just to make sure that we are able to meet the applications and that we maximize the funds. And I'll say what somebody said to me, this is not the time for you to go out and buy a new car, just do different, just buy stuff because you might have gotten an idle loan. This is the time for us to hunker down and make sure that we have funds so that when we open back up, we are back in business.
Thank you. Thank you, Lydia. I'm sorry. Thank you, Leah. Okay, here's a follow-up item. I'm going to do this in two parts. First part is to apply for EIDL or PPP. Does it make a difference if you're a non-essential business? And this is referring to the essential versus non-essential business list that the Nevada governor came up with. So that's part one, and I'll stop and let you answer.
This is Lydia. No, it doesn't make a difference. My business is an essential business, but I did reduce my staff. So again, it is an essential business, but because the quarantine, essential businesses are reducing their staff as well. So it's affecting all businesses, essential or non-essential businesses. So if it's affecting your business in any way, you definitely want to apply for it. The key, just like we keep reiterating, is the substantiation for it. So if you apply for it and you can substantiate for it, it will be forgiven. If you apply for it and you cannot substantiate it, it will turn into a loan. And again, the interest rates for these loans at 1% for the PPP is a great rate. So again, I say to everyone to apply for it, get with a professional, an accountant or a bookkeeper or your payroll provider to help you in substantiating it, and apply for it if your business needs it. Our goal is to get business back to business.
And then I want to also add that you can apply for both programs, or if you have an EIDL application out there, you can also apply for PPP. You just can't use the funds for the same thing twice. So if you get PPP funds and say your amount is $7,500 and you use those funds for payroll, you can use the EIDL funds when those funds run out and to pay some other expenses. Right now, it is through June 30th. They're saying 8 weeks, but things are consistently changing about these programs. I know it was hard. It was kind of hard at first because the information you got at 9 o'clock wasn't the same at 12 o'clock. Now things are slowing down and we're getting some solid guidelines. I know the payroll is looking through June 30th, and I guess it depends on when we open up. But if you plan again on how you're going to use the funds, we can maximize the benefit of it turning into a grant. If you are not sure, call your accounting professional, because I know we're getting additional emails from different societies or things that we possibly belong to, and they're giving us additional guidance on how to handle this so that we can ensure that our businesses can go back to business. I know Nevada for PPP got $2 billion. That's $2 billion, y'all, in this state alone for PPP. That's huge. So we are getting funded. Now we need to make sure that we're able to go open up and go back in business when it's time for us to get off quarantine.
All right, thanks, Leah. Okay, the part two that I wanted to cover, and I may address this a little bit myself to start the conversation. Any advice as far as paying my monthly lease if I'm not eligible or can't qualify for any of the COVID-19 lending? Here's what I would suggest you do. Per the governor, they've made it very clear that during the restricted movement or stay-at-home period, if you're in a commercial lease, they are not supposed to evict you or do any or take any type of adverse action against you. However, as the tenant, what I would recommend you do is reach out to whoever your lease holder is and negotiate with them what you can do. Now, having said that, if you are in a position to either make a partial payment or a total payment, my suggestion is to go ahead and do that. But again, regardless of your situation, if you're being impacted by COVID-19 and you're not eligible or you don't qualify for any of the programs that we're talking about, please communicate with your leaseholder and see what's possible. Let me also say this. If there's anyone out there, or if you know others that are out there, and this is not just for commercial leases, this is for residential situations too. I want to mention this on behalf of your small business households. If people are doing things that they should not be doing, please contact the Attorney General's office, and they are there to make sure that people do not strong arm people during this period. So hopefully that addresses that question that came up. Are there any other questions at this time before we wrap up? Okay, I don't see any questions, so let me do this. Okay, the question was, did either Leah or Lydia, and I'm going to throw Phyllis in there to answer as well, do you provide pro bono services? And I'm going to kind of prime the pump here. If somebody has a question initially just to get started, will you speak with them pro bono just to get started? Leah, I'll go with Leah first.
Okay, so yes, I do have conversations pro bono. I will, if you call our office, we do answer questions for clients that have questions about it. Do we do the work that's provided? I will lay it out for you, but no, we do not do the work pro bono. But I will lay it out for you to tell you what you have to do.
Okay, and then Lydia?
Yes, my office does do free consultations, and we will help you with regards to pro bono work. But depending on what it is, my passion is children and education. If there is a project that's related to helping young people, educating them with financial literacy, or educating young people, I do pro bono work with regards to educating young people with financial literacy or any kids. So yes, we do pro bono work depending on what it is and if it's a nonprofit organization. So it depends on what it is.
Okay, and then Phyllis, let me see if you're still on the line. If you go ahead, unmute yourself, and if you could answer that question too.
Yes, so I do free consultations, and I'll actually drop my schedule link in the chat so you guys can schedule something with me. Excuse me. In terms of pro bono, I do discounted services based on, if you're unemployed, or for senior citizens, which is kind of my passion. So just kind of based on the free 15-minute consultation, I will work with you.
Okay, thank you very much, Phyllis. So what I want to emphasize is to anybody that's listening or to anyone that you know, do not suffer in silence is the term I use. And what I'm getting at is at least contact one of these three individuals to do an initial consultation to see where you're at. That is very, very important. What we do not want to see at the Urban Chamber is we do not want to see people up front miss out on funds. Number two, we don't want to see people lose out on the forgivable aspect of the PPP program or the advance for the EIDL. And then last but not least, we do not want to see people get the funds, but 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, be in a position where they're not able to execute a successful recovery plan because they didn't come up with a way to move forward and document what they were doing. So again, all three of the individuals have pointed out that they will offer a free consultation up front. Let me check the chat room one last time here. Okay, very good. And again, we will follow up and provide the presentation via PDF form. In addition to that, once it's video edited and packaged properly, we will also either post it on our website or get it distributed to our membership. What I want to do at this time is I want to say thank you very much to both Leah and Lydia for doing this webinar on behalf of the Urban Chamber today. I appreciate the information because there were a few updates that, as much as I'm trying to stay on top of things, it helps to surround yourself with professionals like Lydia and Leah that I can consult on behalf of our small businesses. So I definitely appreciate that. Melvin Stringer just came in with an update. State is still not processing unemployment for self-employed. What I'll commit to you is that's something that the Urban Chamber will monitor. And then if we need to send an update once it is available with a link, we can do that. My staff is on here. I want to thank Delisa for helping get the presentation and the webinar logistics done, as well as getting us through the presentation. And along those lines, she'll help us follow up on the state situation for people that are self-employed to file, because that's very important. Let me also mention this. A couple of days from now, and we may have some updates by then, we'll be doing a virtual town hall with Congresswoman Susie Lee. Part of the highlight for that will be a discussion on independent contractors, as well as an additional update on how things have progressed for this second or this next round of PPP funding. So you can mark your calendars. That'll be 10 a.m. The information is out there on social media as well as our website, but that'll be 10 a.m. Pacific time, virtual town hall with Congresswoman Susie Lee via the Urban Chamber. And again, the topics of discussion will be an update on this next round of funds that we received, as well as touching on independent contractors. And hopefully by then the state website will be up and running as well. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much to everyone who participated this morning on behalf of the Urban Chamber of Commerce. We are here for small, diverse businesses, and we're going to be here to make the journey with you during the COVID-19 immediate response and then the short and long-term recovery as we move ahead. So thank you all again. Please have a positive and productive week to the extent possible, and look forward to interacting with you as we move forward. Thank you again, and this concludes the call.